Hello to the pessimistic, optimistic, and everyone in between. My name is Connor Phillippe, and welcome back to the Minnesotan Sports Podcast. A little more of a stripped-down version of the podcast here today, as not all the cameras and nice lighting, so don't look as good, don't sound quite as good, but just kind of a little more of a laid-back video as I go through and just make these picks and predictions for Week 1 of the NFL season. Officially kicks off tonight if you're watching it when this is uploaded, so Eagles, Cowboys tonight, starting off the NFL season. Could not be more excited for the season to start. I think there's going to be a lot of exciting, fun moments this season, a lot of things we might not expect, but going to do our best here to make these picks and predictions. This year I'm staying consistent with actually tallying the numbers. I always say I want to keep myself accountable with these picks and predictions, but then I run out of time to hold myself accountable and grade myself on them. So this year I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to let you guys know what I'm right and wrong about this season, and especially with the upset of the week, which if you don't know and are new to the channel, first of all, thank you for joining, and hopefully you'll like this video and decide to subscribe if you like my content. But I always do an upset of the week where no matter what, I have to choose one upset that's going to happen every single week. And I don't have a specific parameter of it, but I usually try and keep it as at least point spread of -5 or worse for the team that I have to pick, or the spread has to be -5 for the team that's favored. I mean, so if it's worse than that, then it's free reign for me to pick the winner. And some of these are actually kind of closer than you would expect, but also it's the first week of the season, so there's going to be a little more uncertainty about how each team's going to do. Those money lines get a little bit more spread out as we start to realize what these teams are all about. But we'll start things off here with kickoff here tonight on Peacock and NBC, Cowboys at Eagles. Now this is one that has a sneaky chance of being a little bit closer than it is. We've got Philadelphia Eagles at -7.5 favorites. This would be a pretty easy one to immediately try and take the upset of the week to see what happens, because certainly I don't want to see the Eagles win this game, but I think that with all the momentum they have, they just won the Super Bowl, they have everything going for them, they have the crowd cheering for them, excited and seeing all the banner raising and all that stuff, to start off the game will be a big factor. Although, knowing Eagles fans, you could win the Super Bowl the year before and you have one bad half and they're going to boo you off the field. So it's always a constant battle with that with Eagles fans. But I do think the Eagles will win this game, will improve to 1-0 to start off their season, and this will not be the upset of the week. There's some other candidates that I'll definitely go over as we continue to go through these. Chiefs at Chargers. Chiefs currently the -3.5 favorite to win this game in Brazil, and it's going to be a good game. The first ever game to be live streamed exclusively on YouTube. It's going to be for free. If it wasn't for free, then it would be annoying, but I'm not sure how well it's going to go, but regardless, it's a free game, and it should be a good one. Technically the Chargers are the home team, obviously. It's yet another situation where even when you go on the road to Sao Paulo, it doesn't really change anything, because every home game for the Chargers doesn't really feel like one. It's starting to trend in the opposite direction, but for the most part, you still see a lot of away fans at their games. I'm still taking the Chiefs to win this one. There's going to be a little bit of turmoil in the wide receiver room for the Chiefs, with the suspensions. Rashee Rice is going to be suspended to start off the season. I believe it's 4 games. So they're going to have some guys step up, but, Worthy stepped up in a major way to start out the season, his rookie year. We'll see if he has a sophomore slump, but that speed, it's always going to be a factor no matter, how well you have with your sophomore season. So I'll have to see how that works out, but I do expect the Chiefs to win that game over the Chargers. Definitely upset caliber, but with the 3.5 favorites, I can't really pick the Chargers unless I was going all in with my upset of the week. Buccaneers at Falcons. This should be a really good kickoff within the NFC South, the first Sunday game of the year. I don't know about you, but I will definitely be going to Buffalo Wild Wings to start out the season. I always do that because watching all of the games at the exact same time is just peak in week one, because there's so many things you don't know about all these teams. You're seeing them all play for the very first time with new quarterbacks, new head coaches, new exciting fresh top 10 picks in the draft, like all of these things. There isn't a single game on this list that I'm not excited about, because there's at least something to be excited for and to look out for every single team, even if they're going to suck this year. But going back to it, Buccaneers at Falcons, minus 1.5 favorites for the Bucs. I'm honestly a little bit surprised that it's that close, because even though the Falcons, they got close to 500 last season, Michael Penix showed some flashes, I still don't think that they're as established and consistent enough for people to feel good about them going into the season. So I do have the Buccaneers winning this game, and I think that it's kind of the situation where Baker Mayfield at this point is in his third season with the Buccaneers. He's had two very successful seasons. This is an established defense. Like I said in my season predictions video, not as much of a powerhouse as they were when they won the Super Bowl, but still have a lot of those pieces that they used to win the Super Bowl. Run game is still lethal, so I do think the Buccaneers will win that game, and they will improve to 1-0 on the season. Bengals at Browns. So it's between this one and a couple others for the upset of the week. And the reason why I'm putting this as a pretty clear favorite for upset of the week is just the way that historically the first couple weeks of the season have gone for the Cincinnati Bengals. No matter how good of a season they have, it feels like they always start off the season slow. And pretty much ever since 21, when they beat the Vikings to start off the season, that was really their last real week one where they have been a great team. They've always started off slow. Probably has a lot to do with the fact that they tend to not play their starters very much in the preseason, although we did see all the starters go out there at some point this offseason. So it's weird that, like, the Bills, for example, pretty much don't play their starters at all and have a better start to the season than the Bengals do. But all that being said, we'll immediately see the questions answered about whether or not the defense being just as bad as it was last year is going to affect them as much as it did last year, and whether or not the newly paid Higgins and Chase combo paired up with Burrow is going to be able to outscore teams. We'll see that right away. I don't think there's enough, -5 spreads left for me to not pick this game as the upset of the week. The Browns are not going to be a good team this year, but the AFC North is always a absolute dogfight. And so, again, just to be clear, this is something I have to do. I have to pick upsets. I'm not saying I predict in good faith that the Browns are going to win this game, but it's probably the most likely major upset of the week. So I'm going to say the Browns win. Bengals have yet another bad start to their season and have to slowly work their way back up. Dolphins at Colts. This is going to be an interesting one. The Dolphins coming in had a better season last year than the Colts, and a lot of people expecting the Colts to finish last in a very bad AFC South, which is not great. But the Colts are actually -1.5 favorites to win this game. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the Dolphins, Achane is a major injury concern. He's expected to start, but you never really know with him. And Tua, of course, is an injury concern. Tyreek Hill has had ankle issues in the past, and with him getting up in age as well, you don't want a receiver that relies as much on speed as he does, getting older and having lower leg injuries to boot. Not a great sign. Like I said, Tua with his concussion problems, it seems like this team is just destined to not get to that next level. Unfortunately, that's just the way it looks. And for the Colts, they've got a lot of identity things to figure out this season with Anthony Richardson. So I do think the Colts will win this game. I think that the home, advantage is going to be one of the major reasons why, and they'll improve to 1-0. Raiders at Patriots. This is a really interesting one because you've got a Patriots team. It feels like every year there's a team that is being kind of marketed as the sneaky team. Not a team that everyone's going to say, oh, well, they're immediately going to ascend to the next level and make the playoffs. But this is a team where people are going to say, this is like a thorn in people's sides. This is like the kind of team the Broncos were those few years in between where they didn't quite have Bo Nix yet, but they were like showing signs of being competitive. They were consistently having 7 to 8 win seasons, but every team they played against, it was like, man, this is a tough team. I think that will be the Patriots this year. The Raiders coming into it, Geno Smith is going to be a major piece for him. Definitely a better option than Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, but we'll have to see how much better of an option he turns out to be with the way that he performs there. They have a lot of pieces dotted around their team, and I talked about this in my predictions video earlier, but I just don't know if that's going to be enough. I do have the Patriots winning another home advantage type thing that I think they'll improve to 1-0. Cardinals at Saints, I'm not going to waste much time on this one. This is one of the only other -5 or higher ones left, and I was not going to pick the Saints to win this game. I have the Cardinals winning handily. The Saints are going to be bad this year. They have absolutely no answers at the quarterback position. Again, like the Raiders, they have pieces here and there, but they have a very, very old defensive core. Cam Jordan is not the defensive end that he used to be. It obviously doesn't have much to do with the fact that I absolutely hate Cam Jordan. And the Saints are not really as much of a thorn in my side anymore now that Sean Payton left. I feel like that was the last kind of like exorcism of the 2009 team that I hated. So I don't really have a hatred for the Saints anymore, not this version of them anyway. So I can't really say it's biased that way either. But I don't think this team defensively is what it used to be. Offensively, they're a mess. Olave is really, obviously we have Rashid. I'm not even going to try and say it. I am tongue-tied right now. But you've got a couple good wide receiver options, but Olave is always hurt. They have and the husk of Alvin Kamara. He is not the running back he used to be either, so nothing good going for the Saints. I think the Cardinals will win this game pretty easily. Steelers at Jets. Obviously a lot of storylines here. How often do you see not only one quarterback playing for their past team, but the two teams that swapped quarterbacks then face off against each other the very first week of the season? Justin Fields now for the Jets and Aaron Rodgers now for the Steelers. And I think it's going to be an interesting one, but I do think that Aaron Rodgers with that defense, it's going to be a low-scoring game because the Jets' defense is great as well. But I do think that if you've got a veteran quarterback and a young quarterback still trying to figure themselves out, I'm going to go with the veteran quarterback. They establish themselves a lot faster. They are able to command the offense a little bit better. They have good protection up front, and DK Metcalf is at least enough of a veteran where I do think that they're going to make a lot happen. I have them as a wild card team this year, and I think they'll start that campaign against the Jets and improve to 1-0. Giants at Commanders, this was the only other one that I really could say was a genuine upset of the week pick, but I don't think that's going to happen, especially with the Commanders being at home. Jaden Daniels is not going to shy under the noon, window or any window really, and the Giants have so much to figure out. Russell Wilson, obviously the head coach to start things off, but they've got a lot of questions in that quarterback room. Malik Neighbors is definitely a highlight of this team, but there aren't very many past that point. Got some good pieces, young pieces on the defensive side of the football, obviously, but they are not going to win much more than 5 or 6 games this year. I have the Commanders winning in week 1. Panthers at Jaguars. This is interesting because I have the Panthers as a lot more of a sneaky favorite to make a case for the playoffs. I don't think they'll get there, but I'm a lot higher on the Panthers this year than I am the Jags. Bryce Young, I feel like, started to kind of figure it out last year, lost a major piece in Adam Thielen, but they've got some good things working there. The Jags, I just feel like they've got the talent with Lawrence, and they've got, certain pieces here and there, but it just feels like they're a dumpster fire waiting to happen, where they are just when you're one step away from the precipice of completely retooling again, like the Jags are, it's very difficult to consistently win games and keep the locker room engaged. I do think the Panthers will win this game, and the Jags will be 0-1 to start off the season, even though the spread has Jacksonville at -3.5. Titans and Broncos, this is a pretty easy one. The Titans are going to have a rough season. Cam Ward could certainly prove himself this year as a rookie, but he doesn't have many options or much help on either side of the ball. The Broncos are, as much as I hate to say it, I hate Sean Payton, but the Broncos do have a good makeup this season. They are built to be a strong defensive team that does just enough on the offensive side of the ball to win games. Bo Nix just basically needs to play like a top 20 or even top 15 quarterback, and I think this team has the potential to make the playoffs, so I do think they will win this game over the Titans. 49ers and Seahawks, by the way, that was the first 305 game, and the second 305 game in that window is 49ers at Seahawks. This is going to be another interesting one. Honestly, this NFC West is the most toss-up I could imagine. I have the 49ers and the Rams battling it out, and the Rams eventually winning, but really, any of these teams could be 7-10. Any of these teams could be 10-7, depending on how their season goes, depending on how injuries go. Seahawks have Sam Darnold. Is it going to be a Case Keenum situation where he goes to another team after being with the Vikings and just completely collapses? Or is it going to be a revitalization like we saw with Baker Mayfield, where he proves his chops in another location and it ends up not being a fluke and he goes somewhere else and succeeding? We'll have to see what happens. But this is going to be a tough one. Obviously, Lumen Field, is that what it's called now, is always an insanely hard place to play. So that's obviously going to be a factor. The 49ers, though, do start off their season fully intact. I feel like their ceiling's 12 wins, their floor is 6 because of how likely that it usually is that they get injured throughout the course of the season, but they're going to be fully healthy in this first game. So I do think they'll win, with everyone intact, with everyone fresh and ready to go. Christian McCaffrey, when healthy, big asterisks around when healthy, is one of the best running backs in the league still. I do think the 49ers will come away with this victory. We'll see if that's the same case later on in the season when these two teams play each other and the 49ers might not have much of their team left based off of historically how their seasons have gone. We have the Lions and the Packers playing each other, and this is wild. This is absolutely wild because after the Lions won 14 games last season, and that was with losing major pieces on the defensive side of the football. Like they went from like a bottom 10 defense to easily the worst in the league because of losing Hutchinson, because of all the other pieces they lost, both starters and then depth pieces on that side of the ball. They couldn't catch up and they eventually lost in the divisional round. But other than that, I think they got all those guys back, which makes them a better team. They did lose their coordinators, but that isn't as big of a problem as it seems when you have the kind of talent and scrappiness of this kind of group. I fully believe that they can have the same season as they did last year. Meanwhile, on the Packers side of the ball, you add Micah Parsons, which is a major addition, but then you lose Jair Alexander, which is going to be a major factor in this game against the Lions. The Packers barely made the playoffs last year, and besides Micah Parsons, didn't make many improvements on either side of the football. Whereas the Lions won 13 games with half their team injured and now have them back, which makes them an even better team. And yet, the Packers are favored to win minus 1.5 in Lambeau, which is just insane. The amount that the sports betting and I feel like I'm turning into the everywhere like such as meme. The national broadcasts, the media, the sports bettors, everyone just hypes up and gasses up the Packers every single year. And I just don't understand why. So I have the Lions winning this game. They're easily still the best team in the NFC North. The Packers have to show some serious improvement this year for me to feel like they're a better team than the Lions. And I understand Lambeau is a tough place to play. The Lions are going to win this game. Texans at Rams now. This is going to be a good one. The Rams obviously have, Matthew Stafford coming in with some injury concerns. I'm not worried about that. If he hasn't already been shut down, that means he's playing, and he's going to play at a high level. Matthew Stafford, like I said in my predictions video this morning, he could get shot in the arm, and he would still ball out. Injuries just do not affect this guy. You've got Kyren Williams. You have Devontae Adams being added to the team on top of Puka Nacua. You lose Cooper Kupp, but I feel like he was losing a step anyway. And I feel like Devontae Adams' skill set is kind of enough of a yin and yang with Puka Nacua, where Nacua has the speed, he has the elusivity, and Davante Adams has the size and the sheer will to be able to get 50-50 balls, to be able to, and on top of that, he's still one of the best route runners in the league, even with his age. So I feel like it's honestly a better matchup to have the two of them running routes. As good as Cooper Kupp was, I think that that's a better pair. And so I think this team's going to be even better than it was last year. The Texans, on the other hand, I feel like they are kind of the same team we saw last year. And I feel like there was nothing super fresh or exciting about this team. There were a couple additions that were made, don't get me wrong. But I still feel like there wasn't enough firepower added this offseason for me to feel like if this team does make that major leap from being a good team to a great team, it's going to have to be on the shoulders of CJ Stroud. But I do have the Rams winning this game, and especially with them being at home, again, it's the Rams. They don't have much of a home presence, but at least it's not an away game for them, and I do think they'll win that game. Sunday Night Football. This is the game that should have been Thursday night, because the Cowboys and Eagles, as much of it as I'm excited for it, just simply because it's the first game of the season, this opening game would be so much more exciting if it had the stakes of like two teams that actually had a shot to be contenders. You know, there are multiple games this season between the Eagles and other teams where the Eagles have a home game and it was a rematch. We could even have done Eagles versus Rams, because that's a game where the Eagles have a home game and it's a rematch of the divisional round. I don't understand why you don't do something like that versus the Cowboys, who were already not going to make the playoffs. Then you take Micah Parsons. But I digress. The Ravens-Bills would have been a much better kickoff to the season. But still exciting that it's the Sunday Night Football game. That's still a major game. And it's going to be very interesting because both of these teams, in my opinion, are going to meet in the championship game. You know, I think that the Bills are finally going to make it past the Chiefs and prove themselves. And so I do think the Bills and the Ravens are the two best teams in the league. I think it goes Bills, Ravens, Eagles right now. And there are obviously reasons for it, and I broke those down a little bit more in the past video. But I think really it's going to come down to which one of these teams comes in the most ready to go. You know, the Ravens have a lot to avenge, especially against the Bills. You know, they have that dropped Mark Andrews pass that could have sent that game to overtime. Who knows what would have happened if that was the case, although the Bills still would have had some time in that fourth quarter to come down and get a field goal. I still think the Bills would have won that game. Anyway, the Ravens have a lot to avenge. I feel like the Bills have a championship mindset, but it's possible that it might get shaken a little bit in that first week because the Bills might have kind of the expectation, where the Ravens have the determination right now. I don't think the Bills are going to, have a bad season. In fact, I have them having a very good season at 14-3, and I have them eventually beating the Ravens in the AFC Championship game. But for this Week 1 matchup, I do have the Baltimore Ravens winning this game, shocking everyone in Buffalo, and kind of having a sour note to start off the Bills campaign, but I do think they'll bounce back. So now, Monday Night Football. I used to do this as I would just tease the Vikings game as a preview. But now I'm going to actually say my predictions. I'm not going to break it down that much because I want to actually talk about it in my preview. So if you don't want the spoiler, if you want to just watch the full Vikings-Bears preview that's going to be airing, I think, on Saturday, then don't listen to this part. But I do have the Bears winning this game, unfortunately, for me. I can't let my bias get in the way. Everyone's talking about how I'm a biased Vikings fan and just don't like the Bears. I have very low opinions of the Bears, not because I'm biased, but because I have watched the NFC North so much. And it's just a fact of life that every year everyone hypes up the Bears and they end up winning 5 or 6 games. This year certainly could be different. I have them winning 7 games this year. But they could show their chops. Caleb Williams could have a really good second season. They could, rely on young players and some of the additions that they made on both sides of the ball, and they could make the playoffs this year. I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying I need to see that first. Because there were seasons in the past where it was Justin Fields' second season with the Bears, and everyone was saying they're going to be a playoff team. That didn't happen either. That being said, there's just so much going against the Vikings in this game. You've got, J.J. McCarthy being the major factor of, I think he's going to have a good year, but he's not going to have a good first game, in my opinion. I think that he has so much going against him. Having to have your very first game, first of all, you're coming off of a major Achilles injury, or not a meniscus injury that required surgery at the end of the season, or at the beginning of the season of last year. So you haven't played a competitive football game. You haven't played a competitive football game since the national championship a year and a half ago. And so that's a major thing to come in that rusty. And then on top of that, you're playing at Soldier Field, one of the most hostile environments in the league in a divisional matchup on Monday Night Football under the lights. It just is a absolute recipe for disaster for J.J. McCarthy. I think he's going to have a really rough first game. I think he'll bounce back. Thankfully, he has 2 home games after this. Any other time, like if you even put the Vikings at the Bears in week 3 or 4, I probably would have picked the Vikings because you establish yourself. J.J. McCarthy has a couple games, especially at home, to kind of get his mechanics down. But because you're throwing all this at him right away, I don't think there's very many teams that I would have McCarthy beating in his very first game, especially on the road. So I do think the Bears will win this game, and the Vikings will have a rough start to their season. But anyway, that is all of my predictions for the week 1 of the NFL season. Please let me know in the comments what you think, and it's going to be a fun week. I'm really excited to see how all these teams stack up. Every single time you make these predictions, then you immediately get proven wrong week after week by these teams that are, changing narratives left and right, because that's just the way the NFL goes. It's a very human league, and these players are going to come in and compete, and there's always upsets. There's always teams that come out of nowhere. There's always teams that crash and burn. So I can't wait to see how all that happens. But please let me know in the comments what you think about these wins and losses this season. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do that. I love to connect with the people that watch my content. So let me know in the comments anything else you want me to answer, any videos you want me to do, what you like and dislike about the content I make. I want to hear all of it. So thanks so much, and I will see you on the flip side.